Good morning, everybody. Did everybody have fun last night? Yeah, I bet. And I hope everybody got their 20-second hugs in at some point in the evening. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Greta Wagner, and I've been in this industry for 40 years, just like Techno Jim. My first job was teaching dance aerobics at Jack LaLanne in New York City. And funny enough, that's the same year that 24-Hour Fitness also opened its doors. For the past 28 years, I've been part of the executive team of Chelsea Piers Management and currently am the executive director of our Connecticut business. Chelsea Piers has 5 locations across New York and Connecticut, totaling close to about 2 million square feet of fitness, recreation, competitive team sports, events, and entertainment. I'm also the chair of the Connecticut Fitness Alliance, so if anybody has clubs in Connecticut, please, please, please support us and join the Alliance. And I'm also serving my 5th and last year as a member of the IHRSA Board of Directors. So I want to recruit as many people as possible this year so I can leave with a bang. So as Al had mentioned before, please see Nicole and join up for your premium membership for IHRSA. So I have the pleasure of introducing 2 really talented professionals from 24-Hour Fitness, Senior Vice President, Chief Technology and Digital Officer, Debbie Fiorella. Debbie leads the company's digital and information technology strategies and operations for 280-plus clubs, which serves over 2 million members. With more than 25 years of experience leading large-scale technology, Debbie brings a wealth of experience to her role. Prior to joining 24, she served as Senior Vice President of Information Technologies for Universal Studios Hollywood, where she had a lot of responsibilities, but one of the coolest ones was leading the development and education of the IT strategy for opening the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, that I actually love. She also spent 16 years as a VP of Earthlink, Inc. Debbie graduated magna cum laude from San Diego State University with a BA in economics, and she is passionate about diversity and inclusion and has devoted a lot of her time supporting women in technology. And her colleague, Beth Smits. Beth is a Senior Vice President of Operations Services for 24, where she develops and manages the fitness retail member services and procurement teams. She oversees the creation and enhancement of non-membership revenue streams, delivering innovative products and unique partnerships to grow the company's profitability. With more than 25 years of experience as well, building sustainable customer-centric and employee-oriented models that deliver outstanding experiences, she has a proven track record as a thought leader who develops strong cross-functional teams. Prior to joining 24, Beth held key leadership roles in retail and technology, including companies like Best Buy and Intuit. Beth received her BS in mechanical engineering, impressive for me, from Marquette University, and was an NCAA Division I basketball player. She serves on a lot of boards and has won way too many awards to mention. And on Monday, I found out that if you go through a metal detector with her, she sets it off every time. She can go into that. So these 2 collaborate extensively day in and day out. It's going to be a fun conversation, and I hope you have a lot of questions afterwards. So I'll start with both of them. The first 2 questions will be addressed to both of them. You both have a diverse professional background outside of the fitness industry. Could you share some specific instances or lessons from your prior experiences that have directly influenced your strategies and decision-making within the fitness sector?
Okay, got the button right. Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah, so as Greta mentioned, I came from NBC Universal, and I was fortunate enough to be a part of digital transformation at Universal Studios Hollywood. And I know digital transformation is kind of, one of those buzzwords, but I think, following Disney's Magic Band, which was probably like the most quintessential version of digital transformation that you can possibly think of, Universal embarked on that and was able to be a part of that. And when you say digital transformation, a lot of people think about the front end pieces, like all the consumer-facing components like your mobile app or, immersive experiences. Like, for example, you can walk up with a wand in Universal Studios and the wand knows who you are and you do things and it remembers, in the windows like that you were that person with that wand doing that thing, which is all, again, a big part of the front end of digital. But what people don't really understand is that the back end of digital, which I call the digital backbone, is really all of the data that gets collected to be able to do that. That gets collected and then transformed and then activated upon. And so, I learned a lot being there, and I learned probably the most important thing that I learned was, one, you have to architect it right from the beginning. That's a really key point, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. You really need to understand your use cases. Seeing that done at with a $50 million budget, I'll be honest, and we'll talk about how to make digital cost effective. I can tell you that just because you can doesn't mean you should. There was a ton of over engineering that occurred, and it really just made me realize, like, the more you can be very specific about what you're building, the more effective that you're going to be. And really the last thing that I learned there that I brought with me is to stay in sync, and we're going to talk about this a lot too, is to stay in sync with your business stakeholders. Because if your technology gets out ahead of it, which, believe it or not, can happen, usually it's behind, but it can happen, you're just, you're creating things that are not going into immediate use. And on the reverse, if you're being waited on, then your business stakeholders get out ahead of you. So that staying in sync has been really key, and it's something that we do a lot of at 24. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that.
I am blessed to work with Debbie because she is the single best IT partner I've ever had in my entire career. So let me just start with that. And yes, I do set off every metal detector I walk through. I have a lot of metal in my body, and that's okay. We embrace that. So I have a lot of fun experiences professionally from Best Buy. I was a consultant for a while, but I think the biggest impact that was made for me was when I worked at Intuit. So I spent 2 years at TurboTax. Don't ask. It's a long story. If you want it more, come find me at lunch. But here's what's super interesting. At TurboTax, not one thing was done without understanding the data. Every iota, every step in the process, from the second of the initial opening screen when you open up TurboTax, whether you had bought the software 20 years ago on a shiny disk or whether you download it today, every bit of it is designed based exclusively on data, and data that is tied to how a customer reacts. You could react to color. You could react to where a button is on a screen. You could react to the size of a text box. Every single thing was tied to data. And I learned a ton. I also learned that I kind of like fitness a lot better than I like financial services, but that's a different question. But I learned a ton about how data should, can, absolutely must impact design of an experience for a customer.
Okay, historically, our industry has not relied a whole lot on data. What were the key observations or gaps you noticed when you initially assessed 24-hour fitness, and how did these insights shape your vision for data analytics within the organization?
Well, I joined the company in June of 2021 when everybody thought everything was reopening. And then Delta variant hit in June. And the company had gone through the first round of the pandemic, was in the middle of a bankruptcy, and from a technology perspective, had rolled a brand new billing system in January of 2020. And for anyone who's done those major re-platforms, you usually have about 6 months of cleanup work to do after you're done. So it rolled in January of 2020, and then this whole COVID thing hit. So coming on board in June, it was a lot, right? So having said all of that, I mean, the company just went through a tremendous amount of change, just like everybody out here, right, went through that same amount of change. But aside from all of that, my observations coming in is that there were just a lot of decisions that had to be made during that time that really put things behind. So nothing changed my vision of what I wanted to do, which was to really come in and leverage my experiences around using data to activate the experiences. But what I didn't realize from all of that is kind of just how long it was probably going to take. So I'll give you an example. During the bankruptcy, we had to shut off all of our tools on our website. So like everything that tracked and managed, like, all the data you get from your website. So to build that back up again, like you were starting from like ground zero to just get the basic fundamentals. I was thinking, okay, we just got to get the data, untransformed data in here and then start figuring out where we want to activate it on. No, we actually had to start from scratch in certain areas. So I think, my biggest observations were that, everybody went through a lot and it put many places behind where they wanted to be. And then you just had to pull it by its hair to get it back to your starting point to then build on it.
And I would riff a little bit off of what Debbie said. And I think, Greta, you mentioned fitness industry maybe doesn't use data as much. I was actually surprised by that. I had made some assumptions that because everything within fitness is all things about results and measuring how many reps and how much weight and how fast. I kind of had an assumption in my head that of course all the data is going to be there. No. And especially after COVID, most doubly down on the no. So we had to absolutely start from scratch, reprioritize every iota of data that we thought we would need, and then even be more ruthless in our prioritization to get at the data we needed to make good business decisions. I was taken a bit aback by that.
Yeah, and also we didn't have a good prioritization mechanism for the technology initiatives. And so that was a key thing where we had to take a step back and say, how are we even gonna, figure out what's first? Because there were so many day-to-day things that had to be done. So really implementing the whole, how we prioritize things was a big piece of that as well.
Great. Building a robust data analytics capability requires a solid technological foundation. Can you provide an explanation of the technology ecosystem at 24 Hour and the most significant lessons learned? And what advice would you offer organizations looking to embark on a similar data consolidation effort? And go a little bit deeper maybe into the smaller organizations and how they can make it cost effective.
She's going to answer all those questions in 30 seconds or
They're
less.
smart. They can do it.
Yeah, no, so at the most macro level, one thing that's unique about 24 or may not be, we have a lot of source systems. So over the years, long before I got here, the decisions were made to go best in breed for technology services. So what I mean by that is it's not a packaged sort of membership management system. It's best in breed of a CRM platform, a billing system, a retail system. So the beauty of that is the power in those platforms is incredible. But the complexity to that is you have to have a lot of integration, right? So that's the ecosystem is basically that. A lot of, best in breed vertical sort of systems that then are highly integrated. And then from a data standpoint, we use a cloud-based data platform, which is Snowflake sitting on top of Microsoft Azure. That probably means something to most of the people in here, but if it doesn't, it's just basically there's a back end to it, and then there's the front end, and Snowflake is probably, the probably most widely known platform there. And so that's basically the ecosystem. And then there's tools that you get all your source data out. And when you have that many different source systems, there's a lot of different tools that you have to have because a lot of the systems are very different. So I'll hit on the fact that if you have a much less complex environment, it's a lot easier because you have way less source systems to deal with. And then once you get all the data in, everybody hears that word transform, and all that really means for people who are not familiar with it is that data is so insanely, it's beautiful because it's all so unique. But I'll just use addresses, for example. Source systems can store addresses in 3 or 4 different ways. And so to use that in another platform that you want to activate to an endpoint, you have to normalize all of that into something that other systems can use. And so that's a big part of the ecosystem. You get it in, you transform it to what it needs, and then you get it out to the other places that want to use it. So for example, 24Go, we have a mobile app. So we want to know when a member walks in that their credit card's about to expire. And it's a lot easier to just pop that message up on the app than it is to have the front person, the person at the front desk have to say something. But that data comes from the billing system. we got to get that over to 24 Go. And so that would be an example of something that kind of goes through the process. You can build this out, like you can start small. You need to get the basics right, but you don't have to build it all at one time. And a lot of these platforms actually offer free trials. So like an AWS or an Azure will give you a free trial environment that you can start playing with to see, and they'll also help you. Because by the way, all the AI stuff is now being built on these. And so they want you to start using their tools so that you can start using other things that build on top of it. So that would be one way I would say, start small and use the free things that are available. Couple things, lessons learned. Number one, raw data. Always make sure you're putting the rawest form of your data into your data lake. Learn that twice now. You transform it before it gets there. You inevitably will want to go back to the rawest form of your data. Get it there raw. That's like number one. And then these cloud tools are amazing, but watch your consumption because you pay as you go. If you're not paying attention to it, stuff can run away and all of a sudden you get this bill and you're like, crap, like where did that come from? So you got to make sure you're watching the consumption and then add value as you go along. So she's not going to sit there and wait for me to say, I need 4 months to build you this report. Because I forgot to say we have Power BI that sits on the front that makes all these visual dashboards that my favorite business colleague loves. But I have to deliver stuff as we go. So it's build as you go and deliver in chunks. It wasn't 30 seconds, but I tried.
What she said.
What you said. I feel like I'm in a marketing and technology meeting right now, and I have a ton of more questions just to figure it out. But all right, we'll stick with you, Debbie. Could you provide some insight into the role of data governance within your analytics strategy, and how do you ensure quality data, consistency, and security across your organization?
Yeah, and I'll let Beth talk to the data governance from a collaboration standpoint and data sort of definitions, because that's where we work very much together. But from a pure sort of technical perspective, one, like you have to have QA, right? You have to make sure the stuff you're pulling out, that you've got your checks and balances, that it matches what's going into to the data source. So that's super important. And then from a security standpoint, one of the reasons why going to the cloud is so great is because, people like Amazon and Microsoft, they have like teams, thousands of people that focus on security in the cloud. So number one, they're doing that all day long. So you get that by leveraging it. The other thing that we do is, many people in this room are PCI, have to be PCI certified. We're a level 1 merchant. So we take the PCI data security standard that we need to be held to for PCI, and we apply that almost everywhere, just because it's part of our hygiene. So you're using things like, multi-factor authentication to get to the data. That's super important. And then you have tools that sit on the data that, look for anomalies. So if something, look at what just happened with MGM. Okay, like they didn't have anything sitting on their VMware looking for like anomic, that's a word, changes to the environment that would have detected ransomware. Nobody's perfect at it, but if you have tools in place, those are some of the things that we do to make sure that, from a security standpoint, we're there.
Okay. Beth, we'll go to you. Collaboration between business stakeholders and technology teams is often cited as a critical factor in successful data analytics initiatives. Could you provide examples of how you fostered this alignment from defining data matrix to implementing feedback?
Sure. So I'll just, again, riff off of what Debbie was talking about regarding data security and centralized data. So one of the things that the senior leadership all aligned on early when Debbie came on board and we realized we had to rethink our data basically end to end is we created data stewards on every one of the functional teams. So I have a variety of functional teams that report to me. Each one of those teams had a data stored, and it's their responsibility to represent the function with their technology partners and get clear on what a data element means. Like, what is a member? You would be surprised how difficult that question is to answer. Are they active? Are they inactive? Have they paid? How much did they pay? Are they also a client? Do they, were they a former member? Did they use a different email address? Have they moved? Like, it goes on and on and on. It seems ridiculously simple. but the definition of a member is like the anchor of everything we do. And we all had to, as business functions, align with IT on what that meant so that the raw data that Debbie talks about is pulled correctly, is put in the right structure. So I have just enough technology background to be dangerous. So don't listen to anything I say technically. Just nod your head and go, yes, what she said. So my point is just that's why there needs to be such a strong alignment between the business functions and IT up front. And so data stewards were probably the biggest first and best step we made to make sure that we had really clear functional alignment and functional engagement, because then we could make better decisions on the information and the analytics that came from the raw data.
Great. Debbie, allocating capital between physical assets like fitness equipment and operational cost and the technology infrastructure can be challenging. Can you elaborate on the high-level allocation process and the criteria used to prioritize investments in data and analytics?
Yeah, so first thing I would say, one of the shockers I had when I came here was the technology budgets are not the same as Universal. There's just a few zeros, a few less zeros on them. And I think in any retail business, your capital really goes to your physical plants. I mean, it has to, right? So it doesn't mean there isn't any money for technology, but it's definitely, the lion's share of it goes to the physical plant. So we kind of set that from the get-go in the beginning of the year. If we have an anomaly, like for example, we're in the middle of a Wi-Fi upgrade because our Wi-Fi was going end of life. So that's something where like, I'll come forward and say I need like X amount for infrastructure. That might be like a one-time thing that isn't, sort of normal. But then we talk about the capabilities that we want. So if it's like around data or there's new sort of like pricing or promo type of capabilities that we want, we talk about those. And that's where we say, okay, here's the bucket for technology. And usually that doesn't change once it's set. And then we start creating like the roadmaps around the different capabilities. And then I work with my business partners, which is primarily like Beth and a couple other P&L owners and operators within the company, and we just prioritize the most important things. I will say it changes constantly. This business, the other thing I'm learning about this business is like, whoa, the rate of change just is phenomenal. Like, you're constantly dodging and weaving and going, oh, we want to do this. And now, okay, well then so-and-so's like doing that promo and we want to do that too. And like, or we want to do this new. And so it probably changes as much as it gets set.
Multiple times a week.
Yeah, but that's how we go about
kidding.
it. And I think the key is really just staying in communication. We oftentimes have to bring trade-off decisions like, I'll just say if we want to do that, like we have to either postpone this or, we have to talk about it because I don't want to make those decisions in a vacuum. But we have a lot of trade-off discussions.
I think that's across the board. Our chief marketing officer, Tara, is, I think her budget's a little smaller than it used to be when she was at, where were you? In the cosmetics field? Yeah, so our budgets tend to be a little bit smaller. Okay, Debbie, in the context of member engagement and retention, can you provide insights into how data analytics has been instrumental in shaping these strategies? And what correlation have you observed between workouts, personal training, and group exercise usage and member engagement?
That one is actually for
You
my
wanna go with
esteemed
that?
Yeah, I'll chat a little bit about that. So, we all in this industry, member retention, it's pretty important. You don't want to see every new member that comes in that you work really hard to get in January be gone by June. And at the end of the year, you go, what's my net member add? Oh, 0. That's problematic and expensive. So we spent a lot of time this past, I would say, spring and summer, really digging deep into the data to understand the impact that fitness experiences, digital experiences, just what are all the things that actually impact retention? Okay, we all can nod our heads and go, check-ins, hello, people showing up. So it's interesting though, there was this, assumption that came from a data point from analysis that happened 12 years ago, perhaps, like remember that 2011 report or 2012 report that said, oh yeah, as long as members check in X number of times in the first 30 days, we're good, golden. They're going to be here for a while. So we said, great, let's just double check. And we checked and we looked and we realized there's actually a nuance to that data. I'd love to know, and you can tell us during the Q&A or after if you all see similar nuances. But our nuance wasn't X number of times in the first 30 days. It was actually in the 4th week, if somebody came, there was a damn good chance they were going to come the 5th and the 6th and the 7th. If you came that magic number of times in the first 2 weeks, but weren't there in week 4, you aren't coming back. So it's really an interesting nuance. And so as a takeaway there, we said, okay, it can't just be, did you show up the next day and the next day? It's what kept you coming back. Did you build a community? Have you engaged with a fitness professional? Do you understand how to use the gym? Are you intimidated or not? And then we're building these test use cases to try and make an impact there. But it was really subtle, and we wouldn't have known it had we not been able to use the data platform that Debbie and team had built with the input from the functional teams to be able to actually find that nuance. And we also know, like, again, everybody in the industry knows this. If you engage with a fitness professional and you do personal training or show up into your favorite body pump class or your Zoom class, you're going to stay longer. Well, we've validated it's not just a little longer. Attrition is 1 full point lower if you engage with a fitness professional. 1 full point. We also know that attrition is lower when people engage with our app. So now put all those pieces together and figure out what are we going to do from day 1 to not just day 28 or day 30, but to day 60 to day 90 to leverage those insights. What use cases? What do we have to test? What do we have to try? So it's been a really interesting journey that Debbie and I have been on together in this space. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and we've learned a ton, and we still have a ton of work in front of us.
Always. Could you dive deeper into the specific use cases where data analytics has led to pivotal shifts in business strategy or member experience at 24? For instance, you mentioned the 24Go app and the Smart Start program. What specific data-driven insights have you derived, and how have you continuously refined them based on your continuous data analytics?
Yeah, so 24Go is unique because it was built completely separate outside of everything else, which was absolutely the right thing to do for the time. But then when we wanted to start to, put those things together, because it's a really big part of the omni-channel experience, we had to take all of the 24Go data that was in a completely different format in different technology and was all event-based, meaning like we would know what somebody did, like you clicked on a workout, or it was all just like the eventing. We didn't have the technology, the way it was structured to understand the journey, which is the way most like websites work. I go here, I click there, I go here, you understand the journey. So first we had to get all of the 24Go data into the platform, and we had to turn it into journey-based data. So once we did that and we got it into Snowflake, we were able to start looking at things like, I just kept wanting to know, like, well, we know that people who use the app stay longer, but like, what are they doing, right? Like, what exactly are they doing in there? So we were able to start seeing things like who was doing, we call it hygiene only. Because if you're only checking in with the app, like, that's great, because we go, it's a much better check-in experience, we know. But if you're only doing hygiene or utility, you're not actually getting, number one, getting the value out of the app, and we're probably not getting the stickiness from that member. So that led us, so now we could see that. And then we could say, well, how do we get them to do more things? So then worked with Beth to create programs to say, one, we revamped the whole thing, the user interface. We did, focus groups to say, like, how do you get more engagement and to get people to do like workouts, for example. And one of the things we did was revamp the whole workout screen, and we saw not just the screen, the whole entire experience. And we saw a 36% increase in the number of members that were actually starting workouts. So that's kind of like one example. And then Smart Start is a program in the app that every new member gets, and it asks a series of questions like, what are your goals and how often do you want to work out? And we were seeing that we were getting about an 80% sign up rate into Smart Start. So we get about an 85% adoption rate on the app in general. And then we were seeing this really high adoption rate on Smart Start. And we're like, wow, yay. And then we started getting the data and we're like 2% of people were actually completing it. So like they sign up for it and start it, but they don't complete it. And that's not good because that means they're abandoning it. And like, why are they abandoning it? So then we were able to like do some surveys and find out, what members were saying. And then we revamped the whole Smart Start, simplified it. There were too many questions. Like we learned all this stuff and we just rolled it now. So I'm really looking forward to finding out, what if the changes that we made are going to increase that completion rate, because the goal is to get them to complete it so that they get results and get that engagement, and then they stay longer.
When it comes to fitness and club operations, can you share examples of how data analytics has been leveraged to optimize coach-level productivity, sales performance, and attrition? And what KPIs and metrics have been instrumental? And one more, how do these insights translate into actionable strategies? Beth, you want to take that?
Ooh, okay. Sure. I'll use one specific example that kind of strings I think the whole story together. And that's, again, as Debbie said, we have Power BI, which sits on top of our whole data lake. And it helps basically visualize. It creates report visualization so we can look at it and not have to go to the raw data, but understand various aspects of business performance. So we just launched, after much effort and lots of prioritization, a coach productivity dashboard and a sales productivity dashboard. So every one of our coaches, group exercise coaches, our hybrid coaches, our personal trainers, we now can see on a day-by-day basis all those key metrics that help us understand if they're being effective and productive and help look for ways to coach the coaches. So we see things like, how many sessions did you do? How much time did you spend in session? How many classes did you lead? How many clients do you have? What kind of frequency do those clients have? Time in session, time not in session. So there's now, on a coach by coach basis, we can see that. We can see percent of re-signs. Now that data being at our fingertips all the way down to the club and coach level allows our teams in the clubs to be able to 280 plus clubs, right? My team can't manage that from corporate, nor do we want to. We want to see the rolled up numbers, and then we want our in-club teams to be able to see at that level of detail, how are we doing? Am I not getting enough clients to one of my coaches? Am I not feeding them enough clients? We're seeing a big drop-off rate. That coach is losing a client every single week. Where are there opportunities to give them more education, to make sure they know how to ask for the sale, et cetera. So we didn't have this data easily accessible until just recently. Now, did we have it in old systems that our teams kind of maneuvered their way through pre-COVID? Sure, but that was totally ineffective. Now we can see it rolled up. We can see it at the coach level, and it's super powerful. We have the same exact information from a sales standpoint for every salesperson in the club too. It's new, it's just been out for a couple weeks. So we're learning our way through the different decisions we'll be making and how to make those decisions, but it's really, really exciting and compelling.
I want to make sure that you guys have time to ask your questions, so we're going to stop ours for now. Does anyone have any questions for Beth or Debbie?
So nice to see two powerhouse, passionate ladies up there. Thanks for all your contribution today. What about employee experience? So what are you doing on the technology side to sort of enhance culture?
I'll say a couple things real quick, and then Debbie can lean in. So I think if you use that same example I just used on coach productivity, we've talked, meaning my team has worked with HR to say, gosh, we really want a little bit more content, education content, culture content. What do we think is important? There's what you hear, what people say, and then there's what the data shows, and you have to combine those two things. So now I know that coming out of the last round of work we did to build these reports, I had a sense that we need to do a better job of training our coaches for that first engagement that they had with a client. Like, do they really know how to engage? Do they really know why an overhead squat assessment is actually pretty important so you can understand a client's mobility? Did we train them on that? Have they been refreshed on that? And they were asking for it, and the data reinforced the importance of training that first session protocol experience and having it be consistent. 36% of our coaches have less than a year of tenure. That's the fallback out of COVID, right? So that's a great example of, okay, we heard it, and then we saw it in the data, and now we're literally in the midst of rolling out a new set of training, which should demonstrate to the coaches how important they are and that we believe it and we heard them and we're taking action on it. So that's just one example of how the operational data translated to things we're doing to improve the employee experience. Because as we all know, the employees are at the center of this universe. Without the employees, we wouldn't have members.
Yeah, and I would just add, we're getting there. I mean, I think it's probably one of the areas where we're farthest behind, and I saw this happen at Universal too. Like, it was going to be team member tools go out at the same time, all the digital stuff goes out, and it was the last thing to go out, and it was not what we originally wanted it to be. So I think we can still do a lot there, but at least we're starting, like Beth said, we're starting to think about the usability for the team member while we're thinking about the end output.
I have a question here. You're doing some awesome stuff. Thank you for sharing. I have a question for you. When you're working on business initiatives, how do you go about deciding whether to build by a partner when solving these challenges?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a tough decision. I tend to lean towards, I don't want to build it unless I absolutely have to. We have a lot of custom systems already that we have to maintain and support. So if it's something that we can leverage that a partner already has, that is almost always our first question. So it's just so expensive. Like I was saying, with how many source systems that we have and all the integration, like we already have a lot of custom development. So it is, case by case basis, but like directionally lean towards, if there's something we can use that's already out there, let's do it. We use a lot of open source too. There's a lot of really good open source tools out there that don't cost anything, that especially like your technology teams just love to play with too. So.
The one thing I'd probably add on top of that, to be even more explicit, if you think again about the fitness side of the house, we have both in-body scales and evolts at a variety of our clubs, and feeding, like being able to get at that day. Why would we ever build anything along those lines? Now, granted, there's a lot of less expensive options that we're going to take a look at as well, so we can scale it more broadly. But that's one of those great examples of, we would never build it. It's technology and data centric that helps measure, track, manage results, and demonstrate that our members really are achieving whatever their goals are. Never would build something like that.
Anybody else?
Hi, Debbie and Beth. Thanks very much. Good to see operations and IT working hand in hand. That's always a great thing to see. My question is, who looks after customer experience for you? So you've got digital journeys and you've got physical journeys. How do you make sure that's joined up? And do you put someone in charge of that, or do you do it between the two of you?
So the short answer is, gosh, I wish we would have the luxury of having somebody that was just like, they owned their job, was nothing but the member experience. But I think at the end of the day, it's really hard to afford that. And sometimes it doesn't even work because it's a very ambiguous job. But we share it. So like for the most part, like Beth being really close to the consumer, and I have the digital properties like the website, et cetera, but we share that. And we did a big exercise 2 years ago and just refreshed it, of mapping the entire journey to know exactly, like at every step of a member's journey, like what is happening to them, right? Like what email do they get? What are they presented with? Like what's the experience in the club? And with that, we've been trying to use that to really guide our decisions on how we want to make it better. But we really share that, and we do try and especially with our head of marketing too, like, what is the consumer experience going to be? We try and always challenge ourselves with that. I mean, what would you add to that?
I wouldn't add anything. You nailed it.
And I'll just add that, like, we're really proud of what we've done. So what you've done. So, you can speak about it and it sounds like it's all packaged up and nice. And like, this has been hard and we have spilled a lot of drinks along the way and we have made mistakes and, it's in no way perfect, but it's, you just keep at it and you can look in the rearview mirror and go, wow, like gotten a lot done. So, yep.
Right here. Just going back to the 80% of people sign up and then 2% of people are finishing the process, are there any broad learnings or keys that were transformational in your process to push that forward or beyond that 2% realm of people in that, if I heard what you said correctly? And just secondary to that, what is the bridge, if you could share, or the bridge to having that sign up use the app, use the services that you're selling at 24-Hour Fitness, entering the fitness workout programs, the personal training? Are there any keys? I mean, you're just launching it, so you don't know, but you have some probably ideas about it, and that's really key.
Yeah, so about the 80%, I think, so we're in the process of that right now. And again, without the data, without being able to see it, we would have never known that. So that was like kind of thing number one is if you can see it, you can do something about it. So basically what we saw is that there were way too many steps in the process. There were too many questions and we weren't asking the most relevant questions. Like one of the things that, we all know that like there's gym intimidation and like people who aren't familiar with the gyms, like we went like, duh, we should be asking the question like, how familiar are you with the gym? Like we asked like all these other questions, but not one that would give us some really good insight into, well, if somebody's not that familiar, then that's the person that we want to really push, their first fitness appointment with, or get someone to take them around, like show them the tutorials in the app. So we learned that we were asking too many questions and in some cases not the right question. So we revamped that and we're getting the results now. So I'm going to love to see like, and some people just said in the survey, I want to do it on my own. I don't need the help. So you kind of want to just leave those people alone then, let them do their own thing. So that's basically what we learned. And I don't know if I followed this entirely the second part of the question, but I think what you were saying is like between sign up and getting them to use the app and like driving that engagement. Again, we find out people who sign up online have a higher penetration rate on the app. It kind of goes to say like you're in a digital channel, you're probably gonna be more digitally savvy. But what we're now trying to do, again, getting the data, is understanding exactly what people are doing. Like what workouts are they starting? Are they finishing them? How do we get them to do more of it so that we can understand, why? So I think, the answer is that we're really on the precipice of that right now, is understanding at a lot deeper level. But we want to drive that engagement. I mean, I don't know about you all, but, the more touch points you have your members engaged in, there's a bigger barrier to exit and they'll stay longer.
What I would add is we're super proud of our app. There's a lot of fantastic content in it. There's a lot of partner content. So thanks to our partners who have allowed us to, put content in to make it sticky. There's a lot of our own coaches who are in the app, which is super exciting as well. So I think what we're trying to do, again, using that data, is stretch the whole interaction so that coaches can use the app to push workouts for Debbie and I to do while we're here, as opposed to back in one of our home clubs. Or, let's reward and let's gamify the fact that you're doing workouts so that you're checking in. So there's a lot more we can do. I think the fact that we have such a broad base of content and now data and understanding how people progress through the various aspects of the app there's a lot to work with. And again, ruthless prioritization of what's next.
We have 3 more questions. If you wouldn't mind keeping the answers short.
Face. That's worth it.
He is going to die today.
I'm going to be quick because Tara's going to yell in just a second. Thank you guys very much. It makes a lot of sense. And starting from the definition of the hierarchies and the metadata and the structure and the data stewards, how do you maintain it? What are the best practices for maintaining the data integrity and the data and quality, the inspection going forward, so that you don't end with, you put all the effort in up front and then turn around and now you've got less reliable data on the outside?
Yeah, what's the famous saying? Garbage in, garbage out, right? It comes down to the data governance, right? So like I have a data engineering team that's responsible for, and when I say team, like I'm not talking like, 100 people here. We're talking like, I think there's like 1 or 2 people on that team. But they're responsible for the extraction methodology, right? And then the QA of that. And anytime we do anything on a particular source system, that those data standards have to be followed. So we try and be very strict about that. And then the data definitions and the data literacy, like we have to go through a pretty rigorous process to change the definition of a data, of like a data definition of what we call like a member or a paying member or a core, like whatever that is. So we just have processes around one, anytime you're going back to a source system, that there has to be governance around and oversight into the data that's being extracted and where it's going and how we're going to use it. So, I mean, that to me.
One more quick add, if I can. We have weekly and monthly reviews of the technology roadmap. Our teams do it, and then we do it at the leadership level as well. And we haven't let those slip yet.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not perfect. Like, so we rolled a product over the summer and it was a little different than something that we had done and didn't realize like the time frame was different than the billing cycle. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, why isn't it showing up? And like, where is it? And how come that report's off? And I mean, we were like, oh.
Yeah, train wreck.
Yeah, we forgot to check on that. So, but hopefully that answered the question.
One more?
My question is around the app. You'd mentioned that the app is a retention tool. And so what is your most effective tool on the app right now besides maybe check-in? And what do you see as the next real great opportunity that you look to put in the app that'll retain members?
Yeah, I mean, we see the highest usability on obviously the check-in screen, and then workouts would probably be second, and then plans. So that it basically goes in that order. We have thousands of workouts. We just added tutorials, so someone can go into the gym and anything from kettlebells to pieces of equipment. We're seeing how that goes. I think that's going to be a game changer in terms of new members. But I think where we really want to go is a lot more gamification. We've added a little bit there, but really, that is where we hear from our members. It's what they're looking for, and I think it provides a lot of stickiness.
Okay. Wonderful presentation. Thank you all. I have a quick question. How do you decide when you figure out the member journey? How do you decide which software implementations you make, or whether you create something, or what do you look for? And how do you evaluate what you use?
Wow, okay. I'll make this short, I promise. I don't know where you are. Don't give me side eye. Okay, there you are. There's a couple of things. One is, again, where letting the data help understand where in the journey we start to see fall off or improvement in engagement. So that helps us, one, prioritize what step in the journey we need to do work against. And as Debbie said, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we refreshed that whole end-to-end cycle. So that's thing one, is to pick where in the journey based on either fall off or increased engagement and where we want to double down. Then it's essentially what is actually happening at that point in the experience. Is it, okay, they're falling off because they haven't engaged with a fitness professional. What do we need to do about that? It might be inform, right? Do a push notification. That doesn't require any data selection. Or it might be they're not getting results. Okay, we've got to find a way to measure results for a member. Okay, how are we going to do that? We're not going to invent it. We could use our friends at eVolt or InBody, or we could, find a new technology. There's a couple that I've stumbled across recently, a couple apps that actually in and of themselves use big data behind the scenes to help us, a data set of 21,000 people with all of their body measurements in this data set. That is actually a great tool to say, okay, how is Beth doing from the day she started to 60 days in? Okay, maybe we use that tool. And so we all have to come to events like this and talk to people like you and figure out, okay, what's out there in the industry to know whether or not we build or buy or partner. So it's just, sometimes it's lucky and sometimes it's just ruthless data insights and prioritization.
I would just add, like, in the general ecosystem of the data platform itself, like, we have enough technology. That was one observation I had when I came in. It's like we were half using some of it, right? So like fully utilize the stuff that you have. It's what Beth is talking about. If there's a new like piece of functionality that's like member facing, that's different. But the core platform, like, I'm a big fan of like utilize everything you have first before you start, like going and buying a new platform that does almost the same thing as something else you already own.
Great. Okay, no more questions.
That's it.
Next year, we make this an hour.
Thank you.
Appreciation. Debbie, Beth, thank you so much.
Thank you,
You're
Greta.
awesome.
Appreciate it.
And thank Greta, you did.